From the nation's capital, Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. A weekly discussion about the federal issues most important to Nevada. And now, from Washington, D.C., here's Marilee Joyce.
And good day to you. I'm Marilee Joyce, and this is Eye on Washington, the only statewide Nevada news program produced in Washington, D.C. Every week, Eye on Washington takes you straight to Capitol Hill for a discussion with Nevada's delegation and other leaders about the federal matters that matter to you. Today's topic, back on top. Nevada sadly reclaims its worst in the nation ranking for foreclosure filings. My special guest here today to talk about it is Mr. Ethan Handelman, the Vice President for Policy and Advocacy for the National Housing Conference. Thanks for being here again.
Thanks for having me.
Appreciate it. Well, the NHC is the Washington, D.C. based organization that advocates for policy and legislation focusing on housing concerns, a lot of stuff of which we're going to be talking about today. And just over a year ago, things were looking so much better. But today on Eye on Washington, we're going to give you some bad news regarding foreclosures from Realty Track. We'll learn why more and more of our Nevada veterans are homeless today. And we'll find out what my guest says must be done in Congress to help make housing more affordable and accessible for all of us. Well, Realty Track has released its September foreclosure report, and the news couldn't be much worse for Nevada housing officials who were hoping that roller coaster ride was over. Nevada, again, is the nation's top spot for foreclosures. The reason for this go-round is due to lenders repossessing homes. According to Realty Track, 1 in every 507 homes across Nevada got a foreclosure filing in August. Now, that was up 16% from July and 4% from a year ago. And when you're talking foreclosure activities, you're including default notices, scheduled auctions, and bank repossessions. So that Nevada foreclosure rate was the highest in the country last month, more than double the national average. That 1 in 507 number I gave you, more than double the 1,205 with foreclosure filings nationwide. Mr. Handelman, welcome back to Eye on Washington.
Thank you.
You've been on the show a couple of times, and of course, Chris Estes, the president of your group, has been on many times. Your National Housing Conference is kind of the Eye on Washington go-to group in Washington. We always appreciate you being here for the housing needs. Appreciate it. So, you know, sadly, as I said, the homeowners in Nevada, they're not strangers to this kind of bad news. Now, the state, as you know, led the nation in foreclosure for the 5 years leading up to March of 2012. And now, though, the repos that are causing these horrid headlines, right? So that's up 230% from a year ago. It
is up a lot. And I think when I look at these numbers, it's certainly bad news right now for Nevada. The only encouragement I take from it is that in the future, this is a good step towards what will be a long, slow recovery, right? When you see bank repossessions, it means they're actually taking the property back so it can get into the hands of someone else who can live in it or rent it out. The idea is Nevada is the leading edge of this for the rest of the country. In the rest of the country, the numbers are actually down a little bit. For Nevada, they're up. But I expect many other places will follow suit. In other words, other places are going to start seeing bad numbers of foreclosures as well. Well, I think they'll see the repossessions, certainly. Right? Right. That's what's driving this. But repossession is sort of the end of the chain. Right. Whereas the default notice kind of a bad news going to be good news. Yes. It'll take a while, though. This is going to be a long, slow recovery from the foreclosure crisis nationwide. So, you know, when the housing crisis began, you know, of course, several years ago now, what were some initial actions that your group took to address the increase in the foreclosure in places hit so hard like Nevada? So NHC was part of an alliance of a lot of folks who came together in support of many of the emergency rescue actions that the administration put together. So think of the Neighborhood Stabilization Program, which worked to help a lot of neighborhoods. With you on this program. Exactly. Sure. Places where some strategic intervention could really make a difference and keep people in their homes and help keep neighborhoods from slipping into decay. Certainly the HAMP and HARP programs, part of the Making Home Affordable effort that the Treasury and HUD have led, have been instrumental in helping a lot of folks work out problems with their loans or refinance into lower cost loans. So what actions are you recommending that Nevada housing officials take as they kind of find themselves, you know, reliving some of the same problems faced by the state in that long stretch back in starting in 2009? I mean, honestly, this is a stay the course moment. This is continue to focus on neighborhood health, continue to focus on making sure that folks aren't displaced unnecessarily. but also help the process move smoothly. So for the folks that need to do a short sale or that need to find a new place to live, use the resources that are available, like housing counseling. I would say, for any individual or folks in government who are referring individuals, a HUD-certified housing counselor can really be your best friend in this process.
Okay, great. And when we return, homeless heroes, the veterans' homeless crisis in Nevada and elsewhere, and efforts to help. That's right after this.
You're watching Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, brought to you by Caesars Entertainment, the Las Vegas Sands Corporation, the Regional Transportation Commission of Washoe County, the Las Vegas Convention and Visitors Authority, Boyd Gaming, NV Energy, the Regional Transportation Commission of Southern Nevada, Rogich Communications Group, and Jim Marsh Automotive. Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
All of us at Caesars Entertainment have something we want to say.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
We don't want you to gamble if you've had too much to drink.
You shouldn't gamble if you're lonely or depressed.
And if you're under 21, you're not allowed to play.
No, no, no.
No matter which of our casinos you come to, our message is always the same.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly. We know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Help Nevada Humane Society save the lives of orphan kittens by becoming a foster care volunteer. Over 2,000 kittens a year need temporary care.
These kittens need food and personal attention until they're old enough for adoption. Foster care is fun, rewarding, and truly saves lives.
I love fostering. I have fostered almost 50 kittens so far, and it is so rewarding.
If you can foster kittens for a few weeks, we can find them homes for life. To learn how you can become a foster care volunteer, call or visit Nevada Humane Society.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of housing issues facing Nevada and what one Washington-based organization is doing on the Hill to advocate for affordability and accessibility. Our guest today is Mr. Ethan Handelman, the Vice President for Policy and Advocacy for the National Housing Conference. Well, last year here on Eye on Washington, the head of the National Coalition of Homeless Veterans was here to share news about the uptick in the number of homeless vets in Nevada and across the nation. John Driscoll told my audience that nearly 1,000 Nevadans who nobly served us in the military were coming home with no place to call home. Now, it's not as bad as it was. The recent peak was 2,419 in 2009. Nationally, nearly 58,000 veterans live on the streets or in shelters. So what's happening in Washington to help keep vets in their homes? Well, in September, U.S. Vets, which is located in southern Nevada, was awarded more than $850,000 to provide transitional housing with supportive services for homeless vets. The federal grant from the VA's Grant and Per Diem program is part of a $12.8 million aimed at helping the tens of thousands of veterans who are homeless across the nation and Nevada. So vets will use its U.S. grant to provide an average of 25 beds per day for homeless veterans under the Transition in Place housing model. The TIP program provides housing assistance and support services for veterans who, upon completion of the program, remain in the residence and transition to assume responsibility of the housing lease. And Mr. Handelman, so things are better for Nevada veteran homelessness, but it is far from ideal. I mentioned John O'Driscoll of the National Coalition for the Homeless Veterans was telling us about the problem last year. How big a deal of this is for an association like yours that's so focused on keeping people not only in homes, but in affordable homes?
Right. It's a very big deal. And one of the interesting things about veteran homelessness is it's a solvable problem. we know how to end it. And there are cities that have ended veteran homelessness. New Orleans did it recently, Salt Lake City has, there are others. The challenge is getting enough resources and putting the right model to work. So you talked about the grant and per diem program that provides transitional assistance. What you need at the other end of that is permanent housing. And we've done a lot of that through the HUD-VASH program, Veteran Affairs Supportive Housing, that provides rental assistance combined with VA case managers to help veterans who are coming back and need that help to get back on their feet.
And it's more permanent.
Exactly, it's permanent housing. So it's an apartment you rent. It's not a shelter, it's not a bed in a shelter. It's a home.
You know, our Nevada Congresswoman, Dina Titus, told the press at the time that when U.S. vets received that grant, she said, quote, "A critical piece to ending veteran homelessness is successfully transitioning a veteran from transitional to permanent housing," which is pretty much what you've said as well.
Exactly, and part of that also means having enough affordable housing for them to go to. Because there are plenty of veterans who, coming home, don't need a lot of supportive services. They need an inexpensive apartment near a job. And we have to make sure that that's available too.
So again, the grant kind of provides that boost up that the veteran needs to get independent, live, and get back on their feet, and get into stable housing. And again, stabilization is what you guys are all about. So what else does Congress need to do to kind of keep our veterans off the streets and out of shelters?
So at this point, it's really about a commitment of resources. Congress needs to fund sufficient funding for the HUD-VASH program that I mentioned, for things like the grant and per diem, for other VA and HUD-related services, to help conquer this problem in every city, not just in the few that have done it.
You know, when Mr. O'Driscoll was here, and I've covered this issue before on this program, and you know, I learned, especially in Nevada's rural communities, although it might be, you know, these veteran heroes are proud and should be, you know, for what they've done. And I've been told that for some who are homeless, it's very hard for them to reach out to a group like yours or to your affiliates in states, et cetera. How does a person come forward, and what kind of assistance do they get and should they be getting?
It is a real challenge, because there are folks who, for whatever personal reasons, don't want to self-identify as a veteran, don't want to ask for special help because they are a veteran. But they should know that there really are resources available. So through the VA, which is the best place to start, but also through HUD or local housing authorities, there are ways to ask for help. Some of the most successful groups, like U.S. Vets, which is one of our strong partners, and we love their work, are really good at finding ambassadors, finding veteran peers who have either gone through the program or really understand the challenges facing folks who've either just come back or have been back many, many years, to help them seek the help that is available.
So if you're a veteran watching today and you need some help, there's a lot of resources, a lot of people who want to help you out as well. And when we return, the affordability factor, how to help people both buy and stay in homes. That's right after this.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, the only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce, Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
When some people struggle with their mortgage payments, they become frozen, petrified. Not knowing what to do, they do nothing. But the people who take action are far more likely to get the most positive outcome. Making Home Affordable is a free government program. Call now to talk one-on-one with a housing expert about the options that are right for you. Real help, real answers, right now.
All of us at Caesars Entertainment have something we want to say.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
We don't want you to gamble if you've had too much to drink.
You shouldn't gamble if you're lonely or depressed.
And if you're under 21, you're not allowed to play.
No, no, no.
No matter which of our casinos you come to, our message is always the same.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly. We know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
I'm a teacher. Let me tell you what I make. I make learning a privilege, not a chore, and frustration a tool, not an obstacle. I make working hard seem easy and giving up impossible. I make an old subject feel like a fresh thought and unconventional methods common. I'm a teacher. I make more.
This is the story of a boy who is very sensitive to lights and sounds. So he built secret hiding places where nothing could get in. The boy didn't like looking people in the eye. It made him feel uncomfortable. One day, he found out he had something called autism. His family got him help, and slowly, he learned how to live with it better.
Early intervention can make a lifetime of difference. Learn the signs at autismspeaks.org.
And welcome back to Eye on Washington, our discussion of efforts in Washington to help struggling homeowners. We've been visiting with Ethan Handelman, the Vice President for Policy and Advocacy of the National Housing Conference. Well, nowhere was the housing crisis of 6 years ago more acutely felt than in the state of Nevada. And while Nevada has made good progress, few would argue against the idea that any boost from Washington is welcome. So earlier this year, that bit of a boost came in the form of a Federal Housing Administration move to reduce annual mortgage insurance premiums. The action, which is supported by the National Association of Realtors, reduces the premiums by 0.5% in an effort to make mortgages more affordable and accessible for families. We have a quote here from Nevada U.S. Congresswoman Dina Titus saying that this quote will help homeowners stay in their homes and enable millions of families to purchase a home for the first time. And Mr. Handelman, now a big part of your group's mission is to try to influence policy in a way that makes homeownership a reality for people. Is this FHA move, does that help further your goal? And if so, is it enough?
It's not a bad thing. Certainly the FHA serves a lot of first-time home buyers, a lot of folks, especially in minority communities, who are stepping into home ownership. So making that less expensive does make homeownership more of an option for them. However, it's far from enough to solve the problem. There are a lot of challenges both on the ownership side and the renting side to making sure that everyone has safe, decent, and affordable housing.
You know, I know that the renting side of this is important. So when we, you know, to be clear, when we say housing affordability, some people right away in their mind, they think, oh, you mean
mortgages, right?
The quote, American dream, buy a home. But you've said for some people, renting not only is more realistic, it's more what they want to do. And it's, some people, that's what they want. Mm-hmm. And others, it just makes sense for now.
Exactly.
And it needs to be affordable.
Yeah, there's folks who rent by choice. There's folks who rent because that's what fits their budget. About 2/3 of this country lives in owned housing. About 1/3 of it lives in rented housing. And that's been true for a very long time. So we need to make sure that renting is also affordable. Based on research we've done, we just released our Paycheck to Paycheck survey in September. If you're working retail, there's no metro area where you can afford to pay for a 2-bedroom apartment. Mm-hmm. If you're an e-commerce representative, right, those helpful people when you're trying to order something and you can't and you call them on the phone, there are very few places where you can afford to rent, even fewer where you can afford to own. So it's about making sure that the people who are helping us in all sorts of different ways have a way to have an affordable home.
Now, in your view, how is Congress doing regarding both authorizing and passing legislation that makes a real difference to housing affordability?
Well, honestly, there hasn't been a lot of activity there. One of the biggest challenges is getting Congress to pass the appropriations that are needed. Right now, only about 1 in 4 of the people who qualify for housing help actually get it. It's not an entitlement. It's not like Social Security or Medicare where you just get it. Only 25% of the people who are eligible receive it.
Wow.
So it's a big budget challenge. Congress needs to figure out a way to pass appropriations and really do it with enough support to get housing help to everyone.
As we're winding down this segment, tell us how affordability and neighborhood stabilization, the two top focuses of your group, how do they go hand in hand?
So we're actually starting to see a shift from one to the other, which is not uncommon, right? We're getting out of the foreclosure crisis slowly and painfully, but we are getting out of it. We're already flipping to unaffordability in a lot of those places. Nevada is one of the places, because there aren't a lot of restrictions on land and because it's a non-judicial foreclosure state, where property values and occupancy can move very quickly. So especially if you look to the coasts, we're going to very quickly see in places that didn't a year ago worry about affordability, real worries about, are we retaining workers? Do we have the folks we need able to afford homes and stay where they are? It's going to be a real challenge.
Okay. And when we return, well, he is the NHC's federal policy and advocacy guy. So let's learn how he's using that big position to make a real difference in home ownership in Nevada and beyond. We're going to ask him next.
All of us at Caesars Entertainment have something we want to say.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
We don't want you to gamble if you've had too much to drink.
You shouldn't gamble if you're lonely or depressed.
And if you're under 21, you're not allowed to play.
No, no, no.
No matter which of our casinos you come to, our message is always the same.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly.
Play responsibly. We know you're coming to our casinos to have a good time, and we always want you to leave feeling like you did.
Nevada's direct link to Capitol Hill. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. The only statewide Nevada news show based in Washington, D.C. All the top federal matters that matter most to Nevadans. Marilee talks with our congressional delegation and other leaders about the federal news you need to know. Eye on Washington with Marilee Joyce. Nevada's Eye on Capitol Hill.
It's already rented.
If you believe you've been discriminated against in housing because of your race, color, religion, national origin, sex, familial status, or disability, call HUD or visit hud.gov/fair housing. Fair housing is your right. Use it.
Having your child hospitalized can be a terrifying experience for any parent. In one moment, everything can change. Here at the Reno Ronald McDonald House, we can help. We keep families together when it matters the most by providing a home away from home for families with children in the hospital. Parents who stay at the Ronald McDonald House have more time with their children during the healing process. Please contact us today for more information and to see how you can help. Donate online at rmhc-reno.org.
Want more federal news that affects Nevada, its businesses, and its residents? Then you need to subscribe to Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter, your sole source of online news direct from Washington, D.C. Visit joycecommunications.com and subscribe today.
And welcome back to our closing segment of today's Eye on Washington. Our special guest today has been Mr. Ethan Handelman, the Vice President for Policy and Advocacy of the National Housing Conference. Affordable homes and stable neighborhoods. Those are the top goals of the National Housing Conference, and they are what my guest seeks to achieve as he advocates on the group's behalf to Congress and other housing authorities. Because in addition to the NHC's work to broaden our understanding of America's housing challenges, including affordable housing, foreclosure recovery, neighborhood stabilization, and more, my guest and other HC officials work with federal leaders on policies that advance these very goals. Now you can visit NHC nevadadc.org for the latest on issue advocacy and policy efforts. But we do have you here today, so we can talk a little bit. The man himself is here. So I thought I'd let you tell us kind of what policy work you're prioritizing right now, and that particularly would matter to Nevadans watching and listening to us on our 13 stations statewide.
Sure, happy to do it. So let me call out just 3 areas. One is around federal appropriations, right? This is the money that the federal government spends every year to help folks in rental housing, also to help home ownership efforts, especially self-help sort of self-build opportunities. That needs to be larger. Only 25% of the folks who are eligible for help actually get it. So reaching a big budget compromise could make a big step towards getting housing assistance better funded.
You know, you and your president, Chris Estes, as I mentioned, you've been on here several times, and every show we talk about that mission statement to provide affordable housing to those who need it. So I want to ask first, how do you decide need? In other words, what type of homeowner or non-homeowner is your main focus when you think about we need more affordability?
Right. It varies from place to place. It's generally defined by someone's income relative to the area they're in. So HUD's definition of low income is someone earning 80% or less of that area median. A lot of folks who are on assistance are at 30% or less. These people are earning $15,000 a year. This is not a lot of money. And they're the folks who really need a lot of help, especially in places where the cost of housing is very high.
In the case of still struggling states like Nevada, what is your top priority, and what agencies are you connected with there, and what's the main thing that you're focused on in a state like that? So
when we're thinking Nevada, and especially if we're thinking about home ownership, which we've talked about a lot, it's about access to credit. It's so that people can get a mortgage they can afford, and that mortgage is a safe, sustainable mortgage that they'll continue to afford for the rest of the life of that mortgage. Some of the policy levers that affect that are decisions about what FHA does, the Federal Housing Administration. Some is about what's going to happen to Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac and our mortgage finance system, which really is still operating on temporary measures that were put in place in 2008. And we haven't fixed that yet, and we need to. And Congress is the one that needs to do it. Okay. We're working with FHFA, we're working with other agencies to help deal with in the interim, but Congress really does need to act.
And as we close out today, we are about done, but I want to just one more time say, we did start with the bad news of foreclosures, but the good news is once we get through those repossessions, et cetera, things should be
stabilize.
A little bit more stable. Sounds good. Thanks for being here today.
Thank you.
Appreciate it. That does wrap up today's Eye on Washington, but we are always here for you, providing all the top federal news that Nevadans need to know. You can just visit our website, joycecommunications.com, where you can subscribe to our Nevada's Washington Watch newsletter while you're there. Be sure to like us on Facebook. You can follow me on Twitter. And thanks for joining us today on Eye on Washington. I am Marilee Joyce in Washington, D.C. Have a good day.